Okay, this episode I have a very, very special episode on dialogue. In fact, it's incredibly special, but who am I kidding? All my episodes are special, so they're special to me, but they're like my little children. Let's start. Okay, dialogue editing. This time we're going to be talking about dialogue editing. I'm going to show you kind of some techniques with dialogue editing that include L-cut, J-cut, backtiming, and matching. Some common techniques used in dialogue. Some of the more common techniques in dialogue would be L-cuts, J-cuts, backtiming, reactions, and matching. We'll be going through all these in this episode. Going to be talking about each one of these and how these are kind of common practice in dialogue editing. Okay, so first of all, before we start here, I want to talk about how a scene of dialogue is shot. In a typical scene of dialogue, say we've got we're just going to kind of go with a standard two-person dialogue here. I'm going to draw one person standing here. Sorry about the crummy circles, and there's a table. Say this person's at a coffee table, and another person's here. We'll call this person Ted. We'll call this person Jan. So these people are talking to each other in the scene of dialogue, and they each have like 4 or 5 lines. What you would normally see, kind of a typical setup, is you would see a master shot. A shot that kind of gets the entire scene from beginning to end. This is typically a full shot with 2 people in the shot, where you're seeing them head to toe. And in this instance, let's talk about audio. Where the microphone would be, if you're shooting a single microphone, the microphone would be pretty much sharing in the middle. It would be above, just out of frame, between these 2 people. And usually if you're doing that, if the people are too far apart, the audio isn't going to be good, but they're sharing the mic. And what the master shot is really for is for what they call a reference shot. In this reference shot, we're going to cut to the reference shot occasionally, but we're not typically going to use the audio from the wide shot. You'll want to cut to wide shots to establish, of course, but oftentimes the audio is not usable. Depending on they use wireless mics, sometimes we'll put wireless mics on the subject. Some audio people don't like to use wireless mics because they just like to use shotguns, because they sound more natural than the little condenser mics that they put onto hide in people's clothing, and they can rub and make noises. So after we shoot that, if you're going to stay on the one side of the 180-degree line, which is anywhere in this range, since we have our master shot out there, we can put the camera anywhere here usually. So I'm going to put, let's say we cut in for an over-the-shoulder. We shoot almost the entire scene with an over-the-shoulder of Ted. So we have Ted's footage. Now, where that microphone is when Ted is talking is if the camera is on that one person, the shotgun microphone is going to be pointed toward the person that is speaking. He says his line, Jan says her line, but when she says her line, the microphone does not pan to Jan, it stays on Ted, because you'll get an audio drop. She'll start speaking, and the audio will sound crummy at first, and they hurry and move the mic over, and then just get a little bit of her audio. Then Ted talks, and it hurries and takes it back over to him, and the audio just doesn't sound good. So the microphone stays on Ted the entire time. Same as if you get a close-up. If you move in, say right here, and get a close-up of Ted, then the microphone is going to be on Ted the entire time. Now, as we cut to the reverse angle here, put a camera over here, and we cut to Jan's medium shot, the microphone is going to be on Jan the entire time. So the microphone will be pointed right at her mouth, and it will be getting really good audio. Then when Ted speaks, his audio is not so good, but now we will have all of Jan's lines. So in this instance, and let's move in and get our close-up, of course, and the microphone will be on Jan the entire time as well. Whoever the camera is pointing at, the microphone is going to be on that person the entire time. That's typically the way scenes are shot. So with all this coverage, with 5 different setups, we have, especially with the medium shot and close-up of Ted, we have all of his dialogue on camera, well, on the audio device at least. And then when we cut to Jan's shots, we have, for the entire scene, we have all of her audio recorded, all of her lines recorded. And we have good quality audio when the camera's on her, and good quality audio on Ted when the camera's on him. And keep in mind that when the camera's on Ted, Jan's lines are going to sound muffled and kind of distant, and that's unusable audio, but we've got all the good audio from Ted. That's basically the way a scene is shot with dialogue. So understanding that, I'm going to bring up a script here. We're going to start with this. Death of Me scene here. With this scene here, we've got an interior Brian's bedroom, which actually ended up being a living room morning. We've got a couple people who's taken a body out on a gurney with two EMTs, and then we've got Brian talking to a police detective. Brian is talking to Paul. So we've got, Paul turns to Brian and says, "We'll be finished here very soon, Mr. Parker. I'm very sorry for your loss." And he responds, "Thank you, Valerie." So what we're going to do here, the first technique I'm going to show you as far as editing dialogue is, the first general rule is cut to where the audio is. We're going to be cutting for audio first. A lot of people's instinct is to edit visually as they go. I'm going to recommend don't edit visually first, edit audio first. and then you will edit visually to your audio track that you've created. That way you can choose the good audio. You can choose this good line right here where the camera's going to be on Paul. Then you can choose the good line that Brian has, then choose the good line that Paul has, and so on and so forth. The audio that belongs to a person that you're going to stay on a shot just doesn't belong to that person when they're speaking. If the main action is centered around that person, you can find a good shot where the audio, if they're walking across a room or they're silent for a moment, you can stay on that shot for the duration. You can stay on that shot, even though there's not very much audio, you can stay on that shot and still kind of edit for audio, but you're also working out the pacing of the entire shot as well. So we're going to kind of explain that. So let's start editing the scene here. So first of all, the very first line that is spoken, the first audio in this is Paul saying, "We'll be finished here very soon. I'm very sorry for your loss." So let's go down to our folder here, scene 17. And we've got several takes. I've gone through the script supervisor notes, and I know that scene 4 is the best take here. So we're going to move through this.
Sorry for your loss.
Okay, and we've got take 4 here of this gurney being taken out with the body.
We're just about finished here, Mr.
And we
Parker.
hear this guy's line here.
I'm sorry for your loss.
And notice it is a bit faint. It's not really good audio. That's because this is a shared mic here. There's a mic right above them right here, just out of the frame. And it's not very close. The shotgun is not pointing at the detective's face. It's pointing straight down to share these two and get a reference signal. So that is not the good audio. This is probably the first shot I want to cut to visually, but we're going to show you how to do that later. Right now I'm saying edit audio first. So I'm going to go to take 2 is actually the good one. Once again, looking at the script supervisor log on 17 alpha. 17 alpha take 2 is the good take. What we've got here is the camera pointing at him. We've got in the background the people taking the gurney out. But we've got all this kind of blank audio for the timing, which is fine. So I'm going to grab this entire shot here when they say action. There's action. In point.
We'll be finished here very soon, Mr. Parker. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Now that is his line. I'm going to use just his entire line and then cut. So listen to this.
Sorry for your loss.
Right there. I'm so sorry for your loss. Out point. That's his entire line. Let me play into this and you'll hear his line.
Thank you.
And his is a little faint and not so good because right now the microphone is pointed toward the detective here. So now I've got that entire shot for the audio. I'm going to drop that into my timeline, hit period, drop it in there. I'm going to hit Shift plus and bring up my track height so I can kind of see my audio here. Zoom up, hit plus plus a couple times. Now the next thing is we're going to go back to our script and we're going to cut to Brian saying, "Thank you. Valerie's been sick for a long time. I'm just glad she's finally at rest." So let's go to Brian's shot.
We're going to walk by.
I'm going to move past the detective's first line, which is going to be kind of muffled.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Okay, he just said his line, and it's not as good. Right now the microphone is pointed toward Brian. So right now the microphone is pointed toward Brian.
Valerie's been sick for a long time. I'm just glad she's finally at rest.
There's his line. Out point. See, if I keep playing, the detective knows his line. And we're going to cut to his shot for that line to get the best audio. So right now I've got Brian's good audio. I'm going to hit period, drop that down in the timeline. I'm going to continue this. Let's cut a couple more lines in. So now here's Brian's faint line.
I've been sick for a long time. He's finally at rest.
Pause. In point.
I guess that's the way to look at things. Still, it must have been hard to wake up and...
Right there, that's the end of his line. And then Brian says, so I put an out point right there. Now listen.
Yeah.
And that's going to cut to the other shot and show Brian. So I'm going to put period, drop that in, and let's cut to Brian's last shot here.
look at things. Still, it must have been hard to wake up and find.
Right there, in point.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Out point. And drop that in. And this you're going to continue from the beginning to the end of the scene. You'll edit the entire scene, editing for dialogue first. So let's play through this here. I'm not through the whole scene, but let's pretend I've edited the entire scene. And watch this. And actually, this audio is a bit quiet, so I'm going to right-click on everything. And audio gain, I'm going to gain it by about 8 decibels. Give it a little more boost.
We'll be finished here very soon, Mr. Parker. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Valerie's been sick for a long time. I'm just glad she's finally at rest.
I guess that's the way to look at things. Still, it must have been hard to wake up and
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the entire scene. Let's pretend that's the entire scene there. Now we're going to go back and work on this visually. So here's the backbone of my dialogue, basically. So we've got good, clean audio. It's almost like you can just turn this video off here, listen to it, and you'll have a good, clean audio scene there where you can hear all the dialogue. So let's start editing this visually. So first thing I'm going to talk about here, I'm going to kind of go down to backtiming, matching and backtiming. We're going to kind of go over these two right here before we get to L cuts and J cuts. So let's go over backtiming specifically. So what I want to do is I want to start editing this scene visually now. So I'm going to go down to my opening shot here, my establishing shot, and I want to cut to this and have it play until the detective starts turning and then speaks to Brian. And I want to cut to this medium shot at some point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a matching point, and I'm going to use the audio to create a matching point. I'm going to listen to this scene down here. And right where he says will, I'm going to get right to the very first kind of little teeny bit of noise I can hear on the will. Okay, I'm going to arrow to the right, just frame by frame, hitting the right arrow until I hear the first right there. And I'm going to make that an endpoint on my timeline. I'm going to hit I for endpoint. I'm going to set this timeline up for editing, by the way. I want to start editing on the line above, so I'm not just killing this shot right now. So I'm going to grab my source patching, move it up, and I'm going to go to the source patching for my audio. I don't want audio right now. I just want video, so I'm going to turn this one off. So I'm going to be editing video to the top line and no audio. So I'm going to come up to this shot and find the exact same endpoint here where I hear the whoop right at the very, very beginning of the will, and then I'm going to put an endpoint on that as well. Let's forward into this, right there. And I'm going to arrow into this, right there. Whoop, I hear that whoop, endpoint. And this is kind of matched here. This visual is going to be kind of matched to this visual here. As long as he speaks the line at about the same pace, you will be able to match this up for a little bit. Now I'm just going to put kind of an arbitrary out point here.
we're just about finished here, Mr. Parker.
Right about there. That's probably going to be too far into it, but that's fine. And now I'm going to, and this is, by the way, called 3-point editing. I'm doing an in point, out point, and an endpoint down here. 1, 2, 3. And it's going to put this endpoint with this endpoint and edit that clip into, and it will edit that clip into the timeline for the up to the duration of the out point. But these endpoints here and here will be matched. So I'm going to hit period. We'll drop it on top there. So this point starts at the same visual point as this clip right here. Now I can grab this and simply backtime it. Pull that back, go to the beginning, and now I have my establishing shot where they're walking. So here's the establishing shot, starts about right there. He's going to turn. Notice it's just playing the video on top, but it's the audio that belongs to a previous clip.
We'll be finished here very soon, Mr. Parker.
The lips kind of match, but I'm going to time that right where he starts turning here, where he turns to look at Mr. Parker. I'm going to trim that back, and that's back timing there. Let's see, that probably won't match perfectly, but we'll do a little bit of sliding. It turns, and it kind of matched, but I want to get that. I want to match cut that on his face turning. So what I'm going to do is Option, arrow that down on my timeline. So Option, I selected this clip and Option arrowed it down. It moved it down here. Now I can arrow up and land on that edit. By the way, arrow up goes to the left, arrow down goes to the right. So I'm going to land on the edit, hit T for trim. But what I need to do, first of all, is I can't trim this without moving the audio, so I'm going to just lock my audio for right now. So I would recommend actually locking your audio as you're doing the visual editing here, unless you need to shift it, which we might do later. But let's tilt over this. So what I'm going to do is get my mouse over. I'm going to grab the roll edit, which is in between here. I'm going to roll edit both of these and see where I want that. And now look, that his face does match a bit there. So that turning, and I roll edited that back. And let's see the way that looks. Now I've got him looking, and it cuts right when he starts to look. And we got a match cut of him looking, and that edit looks really good. So basically what I did is I did a match by putting an endpoint and an endpoint on the W, and then I back timed that video over this. I brought it down onto this clip here. I selected it and Option arrowed it down, and I trimmed this. I brought up my trim window and did a roll edit on this scene here until I got his face to match turning his head there. So there we go. So it's the audio that belongs, and this is technically a J cut, but you really notice J cuts and L cuts when you are editing the actual dialogue. Now a J cut is where this edit here, where the audio from the second clip in this little edit here, the audio extends back into this previous clip here, and it forms the shape of a J, and that is a J cut. And L is the opposite. It goes down and over, and the audio extends into another clip. And that's basically what a J cut and an L cut is. Now as we play through this...
We'll be finished here very soon, Mr. Parker. I'm very sorry for your loss.
And here we might want to, so let's go through J cuts and L cuts. So the next thing I kind of want to cover here is J cut and L cut. This shot feels like I need to cut to Brian and kind of get his reaction while the detective is speaking to him. So what I'm going to have to do is grab this footage and pull it back, and we are going to create an L cut here. So let's do that. We can do this one of two ways. We can use the trim window, or we can simply just use our N tool, our roll tool. That is, you hit N or select it over here. I'm going to grab this edit between here. My audio is locked, so it is not editing audio here. I'm going to grab this and move it back. So now it's going to cut to Brian while the detective is still talking right here, and I've created an L cut. Let's see how that looks.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
Now the audio did not match up there, but it's got the concept is there. While this guy is talking, we cut to his reaction. While the detective is talking, we cut to Brian's reaction.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
But the audio doesn't quite match up. It's just a little bit off. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to unlock my audio. So the way you fix that here is I'm going to do the same sort of match cutting here. I hit A for my all tracks forward. I'm going to grab this and move it out a little bit. And I'm going to go back to my trim tool, which is V. And I'm going to get this right on the end of the S here, where he just goes loss.
Your loss.
Right when it stops, I'm going to cut that off. Command K, select this clip, delete it, and I'm going to grab this one, back time it, trim it backwards a little bit, and get it right at the exact same frame here.
For your loss.
Right there. And I'm going to trim that. You can cut that. Actually, a quicker way of cutting and trimming will actually be Q. Q is going to delete this to the left. Over here I should have hit W. In fact, let me do that really quick and show you. I'm going to move over here. End of loss. I'll hit W, and it will cut and delete that to the right. There we go. I'm going to trim this back and do the same thing. Right at the end of loss, and hit Q and delete that to the left. I'm going to fill that gap there, select the gap, and hit delete. So right now this ends right at the end of loss.
Your loss.
And this should be matching up. Let's lock our audio and try a roll edit now. Hit N, grab this, drag it back, and now this should be, his lips should kind of match as it cuts to the shot over here, and it looks like this was shot with two cameras. It was only shot with one camera, but now it will look like it was shot with two, because you will see him still talking when it cuts over the shoulder, and the audio should match up. Let's try it.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
And so you can see his lips actually say loss, and it matches up with the audio from the previous clip there. So now this is pretty seamless
Very
here.
soon, Mr. Parker. I'm very sorry for your loss.
And now we see his reaction before the detective finishes his line. And we got an L cut.
Thank you. Valerie had been sick for a long time. I'm just glad she's finally at rest.
Okay, and now let's go over reactions. So we've kind of covered a little bit of matching. We've covered back timing. We've covered L cuts and J cuts. We're going to be doing a little bit more matching here mixed together with reactions. I want to do a reaction shot. So a little trick for reaction here is, first of all, this is a long clip here before it cuts back to the detective. So we might want to cut to the detective over here and then cut back to Brian for the end of his line, just to show a reaction here.
Valerie had been sick for a long time.
Maybe right there. So what I'm going to do, what you can do is you can go through the footage and find a good reaction and plug it in there. But the easiest way to do this is to back time a clip either before the edit or after the edit. Let's choose the clip before the edit. I'm going to Option, select that clip. Actually, my audio is locked, so it won't matter. But if you need to select a video clip separate from the audio, you hold down Option and select, and it will select it independently. Actually, while holding Option, I'm going to drag this clip up. That just duplicated this clip up above. Now I can grab this and trim it forward. I'm going to trim this over most of this shot here. Stop right about there and grab the end and trim it over as well. What I just did there is I moved the timing from this clip downstream and put it up over here. So now these lips might match, but I doubt it. We'll probably have to play with this a little bit, but let's play through this and see.
Thank you. Valerie had been.
And it's off just a little bit, but we can try to shift that over a little bit.
Thank you.
And the way Brian is looking here is kind of mismatched. Here he's kind of looking down.
Thank you.
There he looks like he's nodding his head, so it's not quite matching. But right there we see Valerie. So what I'm going to do is cut that down to right where he says Va and find the point where he says Valerie right here. Right there. So I'm going to grab this and move it down to match the endpoint of him saying Va with the Va right there visually. I'm going to hold down Command, and this will be holding down Alt on a PC, Command on a Mac, Alt on a PC, and I'm going to arrow right while I'm holding down Command. And see what it does? It shifts that over one frame at a time. I'm going to go right there on that playhead, and let's see if that matches.
Valerie had been sick for a long time.
See, and it's starting to mismatch after a little bit, but at first it's matching. So what I'm going to do is trim this back before it starts mismatching and trim this one back a little bit. Right there where his head is matching. Let's see what that looks like.
Thank you. Valerie had been sick for a long time.
And there we go. So when it cuts over the shoulder, that audio now matches.
Thank you. Valerie had been sick for a long time.
And it cuts back to the detective. So we've got reaction shot. Same thing here. I'm going to move this shot down. And I'm going to have a reaction shot over the detective here. I can either choose the video clip before it or the video clip after it. This time, since we did it before, let's do it afterwards this time just to see how that goes. I'm going to select that one, Option, drag it up, and it duplicates it. Grab this and trim it backwards for our reaction shot. Grab this one, trim it this way. And now we've got our reaction shot there. Let's see how that looks.
I guess that's the way to look at things. Still, it must have been hard to
And actually his lips pretty closely
look at
matched there.
things. Still,
The still is just a little bit off.
still,
Yeah, it's actually pretty close. So that back time worked really well.
way to look at things. Still, things. Still,
There we go. That matched a little bit. I moved it 2 frames over to the right.
things. Still, it must have been hard to wake up.
And that worked pretty well. So that back timing worked really quite well. I'm surprised. Sometimes you get those little serendipitous moments. So I'm going to Option arrow that down. And there's our scene. Let's go ahead and watch the scene through and see how that turned out. And actually, the scene won't start until they start moving. So I'm going to cut that off right there. And let's play through it.
We'll be finished here very soon, Mr. Parker. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you. Valerie had been sick for a long time. I'm just glad she's finally at rest.
I guess that's the way to look at things. Still, it must have been hard to wake up and
Yeah.
There we go. Pretty seamless. So that is basically how you edit a scene of dialogue. So just to kind of quickly refresh those rules there, the very first thing that you do is you edit for dialogue. And remember that the microphone is usually on the person where the camera is pointed. If you're on a wide shot like this and you have 2 people in the shot, the microphone is usually between them and it's not as good as audio. That's called a reference shot. But then when you're cutting to the medium shots and close-ups, so what we did is we edited for audio first. And then we went back and started editing the dialogue. And the things that we kind of covered with editing the dialogue is doing L cuts and J cuts to cut to people, to preempt people before it cuts away from the audio, or J cut for the kind of opposite effect. Back timing, and the way we did back timing is we found a point to match on. We use matching and back timing at the same time. Find a kind of an audio cue to match on, bring the clip down, and you back it up. Or you can even do forward timing as well. Same concept. And then we showed you how to do reactions by duplicating a clip previous to the clip where you want the reaction, or after the clip where you want the reaction, and trimming it over the top and finding a point to match it as well. So kind of matching is what you do with reactions and back timing. And then L cuts and J cuts, and we actually did some matching on L cuts and J cuts. If you have any questions or comments, please post them, and hopefully this helps you edit dialogue a lot easier.